to say thank you to all of you for being here for, until the end of the conference. And it's really great to be back in my, I guess maybe I'll click this forward. It's great to be back in my hometown and in this new high school. The one thing that is familiar to me, because this is my first time in this new high school, I went to the high school that was near downtown. But the one thing that's familiar to me is if you can see that blue jay on the wall right there, I'm pretty sure that same blue jay might have been hanging in the gym in my old school near downtown. So it's fun to see that again. And I have a lot of great memories from high school, just a ton of them. But in general from my school days, but there's some dark memories from school also. Grade school through high school. One of the memories I have was when I was in first grade. We were learning to count by fives. So 5, 10, 15, 20. And I was, the person called upon to, do this process and say out loud, that counting process. And I would go from 10 to 20. And I couldn't remember 15. And my heart's kind of racing even telling you this story. So the teacher, this is in first grade, the teacher slowly walked over to the closet where she kept her paddle for spanking students. And I was terrified. I'm like shaking right now telling you about it. I was terrified. I guess that was, the process that was supposed to incent me to remember the number 15. Through the process, I, ended up wetting my pants. I'm in first grade, and I had to deal with that. And that, I could remember that, like it was yesterday. So that was a very traumatic experience for me growing up. And in high school, just kids weren't respected back then, not like they are now. And in high school, we talk about the assistant principal being the disciplinarian in schools. And I'll never forget, the assistant principal in my high school kicking a kid all the way down the hall to his classroom. I'll never forget that. But, thank goodness, I guess I would say that, to me, to me it seemed like empathy and respect for youth was non-existent in school. And for me, in my home as well. And those traumatic experiences had a really lifelong, lasting impact on me, and especially an early impact on my self-confidence. But I'm so grateful that we now live in a world where kids are respected, they're heard, where parents are thoughtful, empathetic, and curious, and where educators and people like you are investing time to learn about how to help each child in our state reach their full potential. This is a special conference because it's about collaboration, the collaboration between education and behavioral health working together to ensure every student is set up for success. The governor and I know that one of the biggest challenges to those with behavioral health issues is facing the stigma that coincides with talking about it and reaching out for help. As First Lady of North Dakota, I've made it my mission to eliminate the stigma surrounding the disease of addiction. And while I'm not an expert on the disease of addiction, I do have lived experience. I've been in long-term recovery from alcohol addiction for over 17 years. Thank you. I didn't talk about my recovery for 15 of those 17 years. I kept it a secret in the closet, because I was ashamed. I was like one of those, I was like one of the people, there's actually like 9 out of 10 people who need help and need treatment for addiction don't seek it because of the stigma. And my issues started when I was in high school. I had my first blackout when I was in high school. Drinking helped me deal with my self-confidence issues, which, I don't know, maybe they started that day in first grade when I couldn't remember a number and was traumatized by that experience. But, everyone in this room has the opportunity to ensure that solutions begin for youth in grade school, middle school, and high school. And a key part of the equation for education and behavioral health is the strong connection to students. The students that we have today are the leaders of today and tomorrow who possess innovation, innovative ideas, the passion to drive meaningful change, and the initiative to be engaged to improve lives for everyone in their schools and in their communities. They are the advocates of today. When I was in high school, even though I was popular, I was involved in just about every activity. I was actually looking for my trophies out there somewhere. I'm just kidding, I don't have any trophies out there, but I was very popular and on the outside looked like I lacked for, nothing. But there were a lot of days when I didn't want to get out of bed, and I didn't really know why. And I know now that I likely had depression. And, as part of my Viking heritage, I'm half Norwegian and I'm half Swedish, I was taught not to talk about my personal issues, not to ask for help, and to just do it myself. In the past year, though, as I thought about my own behavioral health struggles in high school and about the lack of resources available in high school, we had high school counselors that could help you, figure out where you want to go to college, but they weren't, qualified really to help with behavioral health struggles. But, as I thought about that, I wondered how we might be able to engage youth across our state to help with being advocates for a solution. So the governor and I launched the first ever Youth Ending Stigma Challenge, which challenged youth across our state to come up with innovative ideas to eliminate the stigma around mental illness and addiction in schools. I thought that, if only one school applies to win a grant to do this initiative in their schools, I thought even if only one school applies, if there's conversation happening around this topic of addiction and behavioral health and mental illness in schools, it's going to help eliminate the stigma. Because just like the disease of addiction, if behavioral health issues, mental illness, just talking about those issues will eliminate the stigma and start to normalize the conversation. So anyway, we ended up with 17 middle and high schools that applied, got grants, and now they're doing really innovative ideas and implementing cool things in their communities, and they're creating safe spaces in their schools to talk about the issues that they face every day that they might not be able to talk about at home, which was, my situation growing up. They are creating videos. The Youth Council in Grand Forks created this super cool video that actually I sent to all my federal connections, the Office of ONDCP, the First Lady of the United States, the Surgeon General, and the Surgeon General wrote back to us and said, hey, we're going to figure out a way to get this video out there because this is a really important video and this is great work. So what our kids are doing are catching the attention at a national level. And so, just a lot of great work happening and a lot of students, that came up to me during that process to say that they, are grateful that we're doing this work and they're grateful that they have the opportunity to talk about the issues that so many of them and others struggle with. So we're just, working, doing what we can to empower students to be part of the solution because every student these days really wants to be an advocate. So this is a great opportunity for them. So As Doug mentioned earlier, we're going to have our 3rd annual Recovery Reinvented Conference in Bismarck on November 12th. And this is a very fun, innovative conference bringing together lots of different kinds of people to talk about topics related to the continuum of care, and for sure recovery. So we'd love to have you all come. We always need volunteers. You know, if you know students that have volunteer projects they need to be doing or they want to do, you know, we invite everyone to come and help us out because it's a fantastic event. And so we'd love to see you there. And then following that, the Department of Human Services and the Behavioral Health Conference is November 13th to the 15th. And so, so anyway, please join us for Recovery Reinvented. And again, grateful you're here, grateful for all the work you do in your schools, you know, so that, there's not, kids don't have to struggle and suffer with the kinds of things that maybe I experienced and many of you others as you were growing up. So thank you so much for being here today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. As you're,
Great job.
You're driving the bus. You're driving the bus.
Can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for your courage in sharing all that. As part of your work, you've had an opportunity to not only in Washington, D.C., but get connected with programs all over the country. And through that, I've had a chance to tag along with you and learn a lot about behavioral health and addiction and stigma from you, which I'm grateful for. But one of the, share with how you came across the first recovery high school in America.
Well, it's actually the first, it's not a nonprofit. It's a public high school funded by the city of Las Vegas, and it's called Mission High School. And when I was looking for hashtags for social media for, some words we could use, one of them I wanted to use was called Reppin' Recovery. And there was only one other hashtag that came up with that, and it was a kid from Mission High School. And so it's a recovery high school where, kids show up on the first day, and they've got something in the principal's office. The lowest level has a tag hanging on it, and it's like for 0 days of recovery, and the highest, up to the highest level of recovery. And so when a kid's at school there, they have a tag that they put on, and then one that's also on the wall. And so, anyway, so what we did was we had a meeting in Vegas. Anyway, I got started down the path of that. But we had a meeting in Vegas, and I said, let's go visit this high school. And so we were able to go visit them, and we met with 4 kids that, unbelievable trauma in their lives. One girl being sold for drugs by her mom. Kids, with younger kids, smoking meth with, them and their parents and younger kids. I mean, it was just crazy. But it's a high school that's based on, there's no judgment. Like one kid, we heard the story, the principal told us the story of a 9th grader who had a marijuana addiction and had about 30 days of recovery and came to school on Monday and disclosed that he had relapsed over the weekend. And they were in the office in front of this wall where they track recovery. And he was on the 30-day line, and she basically, the principal, moved his, tag down to the 0 days and just said, well, welcome home. And so there was no, you're suspended. There was no, it was, we're so glad you're here. Let's just go about our day. And so that, the experience that you and I had there was probably something we'll never forget in our lives, and very inspiring for me, and really also helped me decide that for the initiative we're working on related to eliminating stigma, I would like to focus more on youth in our state.
Yeah, and I'd say it was super powerful for me because knowing, the rules in North Dakota High School Athletics Association, first violation, you miss 6 weeks, second, 18 weeks. I grew up in a sports culture, the thought that, if I knew anybody when I was in high school, if somebody was, had a beer over the weekend, the last thing you want to do is anybody to find out about it, much less tell a teacher or an instructor, because your life was going to be over. You're going to get expelled. You're going to lose your connections with the people you had the relations with, likely the coach, the people. And here we were in the school witnessing people who were using the things you need to stay in recovery, which is brutal self-honesty about yourself and where you're at. And they were coming in and practicing that with the faculty and saying, I used last night. I was back with my gang. Whatever. And then the consequence was a hug, welcome home, a simple move with their photo to the beginning, and then get to class. They held recovery meetings, in the school. They expanded their services to start supporting the whole family. So they're having meetings after work, and the people that we met, as Kathryn said, had overcome so much trauma in their lives, and it was amazing. And this was part of as Kathryn said, part of the Clark County school system, and
it's the only publicly funded recovery school in the nation.
And how did this happen? The students actually went. So we're talking about a county school system. There's 300,000 kids, almost three times what we have in North Dakota. They couldn't get their head around having a school. There was so much stigma at the community level, even in crazy Las Vegas, even in there and with the school board. They said, what are they going to say if we have a high school that's dedicated to where they said, oh, what do you mean? We're going to put all the addicts in one place? That's literally the language they were using. We're going to put all the addicts in one place.
And who's going to teach them?
And then who's going to teach them? And so it was the students that actually made the proposal all the way up the chain to the school board to get it done. And at that proposal, when a 16-year-old was bearing her soul and saying, we need this. We need to be in a place, because if we're in a regular school, we're not in a place where we're going to be surrounded by people that understand us and understand our recovery needs, because regular public school, people doing drugs, dealing drugs, doing all the stuff that would go on in a big urban high school. School board said, who's going to teach there? A principal that had been in recovery for over 20 years and had never told anybody, because he was afraid of the shame and stigma of what it might mean to his career if they found out that he was a former addict, could affect his professional career. He said at that moment during the school board meeting, he said, if she's going to have the courage as a 16-year-old to make this pitch, I need to open my mouth. And he, in front of the school board, said, I will transfer there. I will help start this school.
Yeah.
And
I'm in recovery, he basically
so anyway,
said, he was well respected, but nobody knew.
But nobody knew. So this is the power, of reducing the shame and stigmas, people having the courage, like the First Lady, to be a face and a voice of recovery. Big things can happen. Now, we don't have the critical mass to launch a recovery-only high school, but I say this out of principle, the underlying principles, which is the model that we may still have, including Athletic Association and others, is if you've got a behavioral health issue which leads to substance abuse and we find out about it, our model is all about punishment. And we just spent the whole morning with Dr. Elman understanding how punishment doesn't work. So I'm just saying, we had a great day today, but we have got more work to do to try to understand how we think about that, because if you punish someone by expelling them, you punish someone by eliminating them from their sports teams, now you've taken what remaining relationships they might have that were working and you basically cut them off from all of that. And that's how we start sending people down a different path. And we talk about the pipeline from schools to the criminal justice system, and I would just say we're so fortunate in North Dakota that we've never had a school shooting here, but I know other governors that have had them. And they continue to happen. And then what do we read afterwards? We read that there were many red flags and that people felt, oftentimes they felt isolated and they came back. So we have, and even Texas, the way Texas is paying for the services of Dr. Elman is through a special appropriation that they made related to $10 per year per student related to school safety. It's their school safety budget that's saying, let's build stronger relationships, not have more policing. And so anyway, again, it's part of the rethinking that we're doing. But anyway, I want to thank you for introducing us to that to that thing, because it was, a game changer for me. You're staying connected with all kinds of communities in our state. You've traveled all over the state, but you're doing a lot with Native American youth. You've done a lot with the Turtle Mountain Youth Group, and you're also in Bismarck mentoring some high school students that are Native American. Anything that you want to share with this group about that work that you're doing?
Well, I'm mentoring a 16-year-old girl from Bismarck High School whose father has been in and out of the prison system in North Dakota, and whose mother is not in her life. She lives with her auntie on the United Tribes Technical College campus. But I wanted, that came about because I wanted to learn more about Native culture from a young person. I thought we might have the opportunity to have that kind of mentoring relationship, although, well, anyway, so she was recommended to me, and I'm learning a ton from her related to being a teenager, but she hasn't actually lived, Native culture hasn't been a huge part of her life, but what I'm learning is that, what she's trying to navigate as a Native American girl. I'm learning about the bullying that happens in high schools for Native American kids, which is just so sad to me. But she's a rock star athlete. She's a basketball player. She participated in, she qualified for 4 distance running events at the state track meet. So, I'm trying to embrace her whole family, and she's amazing. And then there's another, and as a result of that, I went and spoke at Standing Rock High School, and one of the assistant to the tribal chair at Standing Rock sent me an email afterwards, after she heard me talking about this mentor relationship, saying, my daughter is in Bismarck, and she's really struggling, could you work with her? And so I've connected with her, but what I learned from her is that this 20-year-old girl struggles with behavioral health, depression issues. But when she was growing up, she could not talk about it because of the cultural, the sensitivity to cultural, I guess I would say a cultural wall about reaching out for help, using medication, she couldn't talk about it. And she said she lost friends in high school to suicide because they couldn't talk about it. Because the elders believe, it's part of the culture that you do sweat lodges and talking circles and sage. And so working with her, and trying to get her past that it's okay to reach out for help and get counseling and that sort of thing is, I'm just learning as much from these young women as I'm, I don't know if they're learning anything from me, but, they're a huge part of my life, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of their lives.
You're reaching out, building relationships, eliminating the stigma, normalizing the conversation, and all of that is great role modeling for all the rest of us. So let's say one more time, thank you for the First Lady of North Dakota.
Thank you.